Chervenak, UNO political science professor. So you heard the governor yesterday, and I'm assuming that you heard or read the GOP response.
Yes.
Treasurer John Kennedy. Overall, why don't you tell us, where do you think we stand right now in terms of the budget?
Well, it's really difficult to say. Certainly the governor, I think, offered some transparency and honesty. Pretty much laid out a doomsday scenario, catastrophe for higher education, which was pretty much expected. So I think it was an effort to kind of get people to communicate with their representatives that something needs to be done, that what we've done over the last 8 years hasn't worked. The state has basically been driven into a ditch, and now we've got to find a new way to get out.
So I'm going to play this part from the governor's speech, and it starts talking about education, higher education.
I don't say this to scare you, but I'm going to be honest with you. No more tricks, no more smoke, and no more mirrors. Now let's talk about our universities, community, and technical colleges. The Louisiana Top Scholarship Fund is now so depleted that if the legislature does not raise additional revenue, fewer high school students will receive awards, and current recipients are in jeopardy of losing their existing scholarships for next year. Even with additional revenue, higher education this year will need to cut $42 million.
Okay, so you can see that you're off to the side of the screen.
Yeah.
Okay, pretty cool, huh?
Yes, this is cool.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So TOPS. First of all, apparently the state has decided to stop paying the universities for TOPS. Some people think this is a scare tactic. Some people say that this is just a way to get the Republicans to be scared, and others are saying, wait a minute, TOPS is doing some really great things.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, why in the world would we even think about stopping that program? Why don't we stop another program such as, food stamps for those who make no attempts to find work?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so your response.
Well, technically TOPS is in default. You're right that they have basically told the universities not to stop billing TOPS, which then means, at least for the state colleges, we're going to have to absorb those costs. So that's already a budget cut for us. And we have to remember that this also applies to some of the private schools. I was talking to Silas Lee, and that a number of his students there are on TOPS. That means those students are probably going to have to absorb those costs. The universities probably not. I don't really know, but that's just kind of my thinking. It's just reached the point where the money is just gone. There's no way to basically replenish the budget because all of the rainy day funds, all these kind of set-asides have already been depleted. Now, I don't know if the governor is using this as a scare tactic or not. If he is, it's probably a pretty effective tactic because TOPS is a popular program throughout the state. The problem is that the costs continue to rise. With increasing tuition means that the state then has to increase the money available for the TOPS scholarships. So, we're kind of at an impasse here, and this, what it means then is, higher tuition and more out-of-pocket expenses for families. It just may, we have just probably reached the point where we just can't basically fudge our weakness. That it's just push has come to shove. It's out of money. It's it's time for some new revenue, or either that or some cuts elsewhere to replenish that TOPS scholarship.
Okay, why don't you tell us, if you don't mind, what is going on campus from the standpoint of the students, from the standpoint of fellow, say, professors, instructors, etc. I would imagine that everybody is just walking around with a big question mark over their head.
Well, we've been doing this for several years now. I mean, higher education has been taking the brunt of these cuts for a number of years. And so I don't want to say that we've kind of gotten used to it, but it does take a psychological toll, certainly on the workforce. You never know what's going to happen from one day to the next. We see people who basically are deciding to go elsewhere. We're losing a lot of good professors who just don't feel that this is a secure environment for them to work in, and they're going to other states who are providing them with the resources. And many of these people are researchers. They have grants, federal grants, and they're taking those grants with them. And so we're kind of seeing a brain drain among faculty in higher education here. It's going to be hard to hire. We can't hire people. We're losing people, and we can't hire. Just from our experience, we had 12 people in our department. We're down to 4 people. And it just becomes much more difficult to sustain a program. We can't offer the students all the various courses that they need to meet degree requirements. So, that's just our experience, and it just seems like it seems to be in a spiral, a downward spiral, and it's hard to envision us getting out of this and somehow moving forward.
Okay, let me go and play a little bit more of the governor's speech.
This will be combined with a $28 million cut in top scholarship funds that the universities will have to absorb, resulting in the largest mid-year cut in Louisiana history. However, if there's no new revenue raised this year, higher education will face catastrophic cuts over the next 4 months. And that comes on the heels of the largest disinvestment in higher education in the nation over the last 8 years. As I mentioned earlier, if the legislature fails to act, and if we are forced to proceed with these cuts, the LSU Ag Center and parish extension offices in every parish and the Pennington Biomedical Research Center will close by April 1st, and the LSU main campus in Baton Rouge will run out of money after April 30th, as will the Health Sciences Center in Shreveport and LSU Eunice. There is no money left to pay for payroll after those dates. The Southern University System and the University of Louisiana.
Okay, so we can go on. Of course, he goes and he describes, the doomsday scenario, even to the point where saying about shuttering the football programs with, I think, a definite, I guess, inference or implication to the LSU Tigers football season. And, and Les Miles bleeds purple and gold. He has a bumper class freshman coming in. There's a chance that with this kind of talk, some of those people are going to say, wait a minute, I'm sorry, I can't continue this commitment to the LSU program. So I guess my question is a couple questions. Number one, who loses with this kind of conversation? I mean, does the governor lose by scaring people, according to some, scaring people to the point where maybe we may lose, some of the, say, top players in the country?
Well, we have to remember that LSU is a university first, that these are students first, and they're athletes second. And that, if it comes to this doomsday scenario, that we won't be able to pass students from this semester on to the next semester. I mean, it's just impossible because they won't have the accreditation, they won't have the grades. The football program, I mean, is basically self-financing. Les Miles' salaries doesn't come out of the state budget. It comes out of the athletic budget. And that all the scholarships for the football players also come out of the athletic budget. Where it really hurts is all the other sports. For example, LSU baseball relies very heavily on top scholarships, particularly for its in-state recruits. They can offer so many scholarships to out-of-state athletes, and so they rely on those top scholarships for their in-state recruits. And if those top scholarships are gone, they have a much greater difficulty recruiting in-state. Is, as far as a scare tactic, can this hurt the governor? It's really way too early to know. I think that people just aren't kind of used to having this kind of rhetoric coming from the governor. For the last 8 years, we've heard nothing but fairy tales and fantasy from the general administration about how great things were. Now all of a sudden we're being told just how terrible things are, and so it is kind of an abrupt change. So what the governor's doing is using his bully pulpit to basically communicate to residents that we are in a very serious situation.
So
hyperbole? Some people accuse him of being engaged in hyperbole, and in extreme rhetoric, but these are very unique times, and there's just this sense of urgency, I think, that he's trying to communicate.
Okay, so here's one of the things that he said, and this is something that really kind of confuses me, and that is that he's saying, hey, if we don't start acting on this, then basically we're going to be running out of money by, I think he said, by the end of March. Am I correct? April. Yeah. Okay, so we're talking about that point in the beginning of the regular legislative session. Now, I know that you've heard, at least I'm assuming that you heard, I know I've read people say that the Republicans or some of the Republican leaders want to just shut down the special session, do nothing at all, take it all up during the regular session, which starts in mid-April. So assuming that's what happens, I believe it starts in mid-April or a latter part of March. I have to check the dates. Nevertheless, doesn't make any difference. The bottom line is that laws, that are passed do not get enacted until, weeks after, and bills that are passed don't get enacted. So if the legislature is just going to not do anything and call itself out of session and pick it up again in say late March, April, we're not going to need money for the campus. Assuming the governor is telling us the truth here, that doesn't sound to me like a pretty viable solution.
No, it's not a viable solution. It's not a responsible solution. We spend about $750 million on higher education in the state, and we're looking at a $940 million budget deficit. So basically what it means is there would be no money at all for higher education. And we've suffered these mid-year cuts every year, and basically what this would just be saying as well, we just aren't going to invest in higher education. And it means that they're not serious about dealing with the problem. How do you attract businesses, when you show that you're really not interested in higher education, you're not interested in dealing with the structural budget deficits that you're facing? It's just, we'll just be, continue to be perceived as this very backward state that just can't seem to do anything right.
Okay, well, let's hope we get it right. For sure, we have work cut out for us.
Yes, we will.
Yeah.